Hi, welcome back to the Silver Lining Podcast with Luke and Monica, episode 7. I'm really glad we did a disclaimer in episode 1 because it's been like a week and a half since we've posted a podcast.
Yeah, I think most of you forgot that we had a podcast, or you thought that we forgot we had a podcast, and we didn't. In fact, we thought about the fact that we didn't do a podcast. Most days we didn't do a podcast, but I was sick and it was a busy schedule, and there's several other excuses that are not relevant to the fact that
We have kids, and they were sick too.
And they were sick. Yeah. So anyway, so we're back with episode 7. So we're as surprised as you are that we're back, and we're grateful that you're passing through and catching us. If you notice on YouTube, she let me sit down before we pressed record, primarily because
That's been the last couple of episodes.
Yeah, I'm just still emphasizing that
Let's start your timer.
Yeah, wow, already? Wow. Well,
you're being bad.
Again, we decided this is going to be a shorter podcast, just like the rest of them were shorter. And so that means that we have no idea how long this is going to be. But we're off to a great start. So, yeah.
We are?
We hope so. We are going to have a conversation today. And one of the things that we were talking about, and as we talk to other individuals that are going through their fire or their grief story, is that there are words that are said. There are gossip rumors. There's basically even defamatory type information. So there's always these two sides to every story, where as much as there's truth to both sides of the story, everybody has their perspective, and people's perspectives are based on their opinions and their perspective. And it doesn't actually mean that it's true. And so with that comes the understanding, if you have been going through your fire, and you're going to have people say stuff, and some of it's going to be true and, kind and helpful. And then there's things that happen where it's not true, kind, helpful, supportive, or it just reopens the wound. I mean, you think about the different things that you've been through where there's just people say things, and sometimes they do it with good intention and it just hurts. That's one thing. But sometimes people say things and it's not with good intention. It's with ill intention. And so this is not an easy conversation, just based on we've both been through different stages of our life when you're going to deal with what people say. And so it's not going to be a necessarily fun podcast. We hope it's helpful though, because there is a perspective from the Bible we're going to give, that we want to filter through God's word and how we respond to the different things that are said. We have a funny story that is not it. This is a very lighthearted version so that we can get into the conversation. But we thought this is actually kind of not even our story, but it's kind of our stories. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Go ahead, Monica. Take it away.
Okay. So, Christmas 23.
Yes.
Several weeks before Christmas. I don't remember the exact date.
December 16th.
Oh, you do? Oh, lovely. Okay. So our church had a Toys for Tots event where they had a lot of volunteers from church come and help distribute toys. And that was on a Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was on a Saturday. So this event took place on Saturday, and I had a friend that attended, and Luke went, and I didn't go for whatever reason. But Sunday morning, the day right after, I had a friend who came up to me at church, and like before she even got to me, I could just tell like she was frazzled about something, like super frazzled. And she was like explaining that they had the Toys for Tots thing, and that you guys had, I guess, had a conversation about something because y'all were working together. And there was a lady at our church who tried to play matchmaker, I guess you could say, and said something to my friend about, you should, like Luke Sorensen. And she's like, and she's telling me, this is the guy that like lost his wife and he has 4 kids. And she's like, I'm not ready to date or marry someone. And she was walking through divorce like at that time.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I didn't know who this individual was. Again, I didn't even realize at that point. I was just there, and I don't even think we interacted. I think it was just that we were both in the same gym with 50 other people. And so we say that lighthearted because if either one of those individuals were listening, both of them would laugh now because that young lady is now remarried and life is great, and we're very excited for them. And we're very good friends with the lady that said something as well. So it is a very funny thing. But from the perspective of Monica, who'd been through divorce and kind of knew that fresh wound feeling of this individual who's literally walking through a very, very tumultuous time for themselves and dealing with the stigma of divorce. There's a lot going on there for someone to say something and start doing the whole matchmaker thing at that point in that person's life. They're not even relevant to me and the fact
Yeah.
that I just lost Alicia because, all of a month later we're dating. So it wasn't off kilter for me because God works things out, right? But just that understanding that people are going to say things that are going to open the wound. Now, with that individual and kind of a funny story, there is another aspect of that story because Monica heard this. And again, we had been really avoiding each other at this point. I was ushering at church and, I was trying to be busy at church. I started teaching in the Awana class at church because my kids are going to Awana anyway. But we had been in passing. So we're now, friends on Facebook. So we're officially friends. But beyond that, there's not much communication interaction. And I've said this before, and I'll stand by it. Monica might disagree. I actually a pretty shy individual when it comes to females. I just, if I don't really know you, if you're not in my circle, I'm gonna kind of just avoid you, right? And I don't know why I'm like that. Probably because I'm homeschooled. It's just who I am.
That is a homeschool trait at
Yeah,
its finest.
just to avoid. Yeah, I'm going to interact with most everybody, but with Monica, it was a weird thing because I was very much avoiding interacting with her. Like I'd see her in choir, I'd see her out and about, but I didn't know her at all. And to be honest, I just did my own thing. And besides, two conversations at the door and she opened the door for my kids one day and they went through the other door. So that was another.
Yeah, that was a whole awkward
Yeah.
thing. That was the night you were dressed in your tunic.
My tunic, yes, my tunic.
That was several weeks before this whole little event.
Totally different story, but I was doing Awana and they did Bible character night. And I had the genius plan to go to the store and get some costumes. So I had gotten like a big king's robe. And so I was going to be like King Solomon or something like that. And Lance saw it and decided that he wanted to be the king.
Yeah, you were in a bed sheet.
Well, that was the leftovers. Like I had gotten Lyle dressed as somebody and then I think Lyle, I forget who he dressed up Lyle as. He was like Joseph. And then Logan was David. And I ended up being one of David's mighty men because in true Texas style, I took a bed sheet and cut it up both sides and threw it over and put a belt on. I had a Western gun belt, like an actual Western, like 6-shooter, like a Western gun belt. And I didn't want to take a gun, obviously. So I took my sword that I had that looked like a Roman gladiator sword, and I put that in there. So I was wearing a sword and a gun belt over my tunic. And so we get to church and all the kids pot out of the car and Monica.
Okay, let's just pause for a moment because I was sitting in my car because my parents lived in Josephine at the time, or they still do. And on a Wednesday nights, I would just do go shopping or whatever. Anyways, I was in church. I was at church early sitting in my car and Luke Sorensen pulls up right beside me and it's raining. And I'm like, I should have gone inside sooner. Anyway, so then
was it raining already? I thought it rained afterwards. This was before the rain started. That was the night it rained.
It did rain that night.
But yeah.
And then so I jet out and I'm trying to hold the door for the kids and they're all just standing there. It was so awkward.
It was hilarious.
Finally, I just ended up shutting, letting the door go.
Yeah, it was funny because I'm getting stuff out of the car and the kids run to the door and she is holding the door for the kids to go through because we're going to go through the same door. She's going to go to choir. We're going to go to Awana. And my kids run to the door and wait for me while she's holding the door. And it was a very funny time for me anyway. So we had been avoiding each other. And so let's go back to the story, Toys for Tots. I'm there that Saturday. I was just looking forward to serving with people that I was just getting to know as a church. And so this is one of the first opportunities of serving at an event with the church. And so I'm moving boxes and we're having a great time. It was a really fun event. And interacting with pastor, and we saw, I want to say we had 36 people get saved that day through the event. So it was a really cool event to be a part of. But this was a gift, this conversation of somebody's words, because the conversation with this other gal who goes to Monica says, can you believe that somebody brought up Luke Sorensen to me about, whatever, right? This stirred something up. And I thank the Lord for it because I don't know our Christmas Eve podcast that we're going to hopefully drop on Christmas Eve. We look forward to dropping it. That is the plan. it has a story, and it's like the Hallmark story of Luke and Monica. And it's just our story. So it's not like a Hallmark story because you can't guess the plot. Just like it's got different characters and I wasn't wearing flannel, but it's a good story and it's our story. So Monica, jump in here.
Yes.
What did this do?
So while my friend is talking about the situation that happened, I'm very aware that she is not ready to date someone. She's not even interested in you at all. But in my heart and mind, I was screaming because I was like, but I like Luke Sorensen. No, no, no. Like, this is not okay. And at that point, I was like, wow, I have got a way bigger problem than I thought. Like, it was the first time I had actually admitted to myself that, wow, I actually like Luke Sorensen. And that's really weird because, to be honest, we're not even friends. Like,
Yeah, and I have 4 kids. Right?
yes,
Yeah.
it was very strange.
Yeah. I think that was probably the day, we could probably mark that down, December 17th, that she stepped on the duck. I just want to throw it out there. That was the duck day. But, you know, we've obviously talked about this, and we're being vulnerable and sharing where we were at this point, because again, I'm very aware that at this point, this is my first Christmas without Alicia. November has some harder days because those are some anniversary days of when Alicia and I had started talking and dating down at West Coast. And so I've really come through a time where I have just gone through just some really intense moments of grief. And we're going to have a podcast here in the next couple of weeks where we're going to talk about grief and the processing of grief, and really get into some of how I process grief and some of how I understand grief is processed. But I had come through a couple of Sundays where I just sobbed, and it was a lot of tears. So I'm coming in very, very aware that I'm in a grieving season, but also God had been so good to us, and really with how the kids were handling it and just the memories and understanding how to process grief. I'm really rejoicing and watching and seeing a lot of what God has done in the sovereignty of God in Alicia's passing. We'd seen several people get saved, and at this point, another couple of individuals had just been saved. They'd reached out and connected because of Alicia's passing. And so my heart is full and empty at the same time. It's hard to explain. But what this did for Monica, and which, well, obviously we've shared because we weren't talking at that point, this spurred some conversations in her heart for her to be able to process, like, hey, this is a real thing. And so it triggered.
Which was shocking to me because, like, if you hear certain people talk, I was incapable of liking anyone. So it was
Yeah.
almost like this, wow, like, it just took the right person kind of thing.
Right. And well, and that was the other thing is we talked about this, I think, in the last podcast, the time before that, we're talking about the counsel and how she had received counsel from pastors saying, hey, we're concerned that there might be issues, like you might have some underlying issues because of your ex. By the way, we call her ex-husband Earl, not for any specific reason. His name's not Earl. His name is a different name, but we refer to him as Earl because there's a song about Earl. And if you don't know the song about Earl, then you don't need to worry about it. And if you do know, then you probably know why. But there'd been the concept of the belief that maybe she was incapable of loving again, or at this point of just because of underlying issues. And so for her to come to this realization of, hey, I actually kind of like this guy, which to me is the duck situation. But yeah. So all that to say, and that's really all of our story today. So you say, oh, are we wrapping up the podcast? No, because we want to go into the biblical concept of handling what people are saying, because people are going to say things. I have not been in any season of my life, any dark season. By the way, I've probably not been in any season of my life, good or bad, where somebody hasn't said something to put water on your fire, right? So, or on the flip side, they're literally pouring water in your water, right? You're already going through it. And some of it is true. I've had people say true things about me during a time when those were hurtful things, not because they weren't true. They were true, but because it just wasn't the right and timing and stuff like that. So as much as we wish the world was perfect and people wouldn't say what they're not supposed to say and would say what they're supposed to say, we don't live in that world. And so I want to talk about the filter of how to receive words, understanding that not all words are going to be good and helpful and kind, and some are going to draw pain. And I'll say this in the conversation of grief, a lot of people are afraid to say something when somebody's going through a grieving process because they're afraid of hurting someone. And so
that is so true, because that was one of the reasons that I had a hard time talking to you. Just because it was like, what do you say? Like, I already said that I was praying for you. I'm like, how do you? And I wanted a friendship with you based on us, not
right.
you grieving. And so, yeah, it's like, what do you say to someone like
Yeah,
that?
and not the podcast today, but I'll say this. When you're dealing with, and this is my perspective and my opinion on grief, and the disclaimer is that everybody grieves differently. And so I don't know everybody and their perspective. I do know this. When you talk to someone about their loved one that they've lost, now some don't like to talk about it and they're avoidant of it. I understand that. But most people that are grieving, you're not going to bring up the pain. The pain of grief and loss is already there. So for someone to walk up and to talk to me about Alicia, it's one of my greatest joys. Even now, you want to call and talk about Alicia and the memories and who she was. Part of the joy that I have is to keep her legacy and memory alive. And so when someone comes up and talks about Alicia, now they could talk about hard moments with Alicia. They can talk about the day that she passed. And there's some harder memories to relive, or I say more emotional. They're more difficult to relive. That doesn't mean they're difficult in the sense that they're bad to relive. And so for me, in a grief conversation, for those of you that are avoiding that conversation about bringing up the name of a loved one of the greatest honors that you can do me and do for Alicia is to come talk to me about Alicia. One of the things that Monica's done for me in my grieving process is to talk to me about Alicia. And so we've shared a lot of stories, a lot of great stories, a lot of not so great stories, a lot of just the reality of who we are. And even now that we're married, there's funny conversations about the differences between who I was and who I am. Now, I didn't change, but my life has changed a lot. By the way, she's not Alicia. There's a lot of differences in that. And so it's just part of marriage. No, is it good to compare? No, that's not a comparison thing, but there is a lot of healthy conversations we have. We have pictures in our house of Alicia to constantly remind the kids of who Mommy Alicia is, because they call Monica Mom and Momica, but they refer to Mommy as Mommy Alicia or Mommy, right? And one of the healthy things that having Monica come into our life, and I had a family counselor who was walking me through grief counseling through the process of my grief, but also was helping me navigate some family relationship things. And I had got counsel right away, like, hey, I've met this person. This was after we started talking, and I said, hey, this has been 6 months since Alicia passed away. Obviously, they knew a lot about my past life with Alicia and some things that we haven't discussed yet. So they made it clear that said, hey, if Monica is loving you and you're loving her in a healthy godly relationship, and you guys are not stifling Alicia's memory, we're bringing Alicia's memory to play. It's one of the most healthy things you can do for a child is to have another person interact where they see the healthy relationship dynamic, and obviously to have a mom in their life and to be that support is great, but then also to have Monica, who did not know Alicia, come into the picture and ask the kids questions about Alicia, so they can come and talk to Monica about a person that she's never actually met. She knows about what I've told her, but when we first started dating, she didn't know Alicia real well. And so the kids would talk about their favorite color and their favorite movies, their favorite foods and all. And even now they still do that. Like, oh, that was her favorite thing, or she loved that. That's a very healthy way for them to process, because she can prompt and ultimately pull more out of them because she's actually curious and doesn't actually know the stuff that the kids doesn't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anyway, so you say, what was that about? Watching time here. That was about the fact that there are things that you can say that we assume in a grief situation where people don't want to talk about the past. And when it comes to a loved one that was close, for me, again, my answer is please talk about Alicia. Even now, this is not. People have, even since we got married, they've almost avoided the subject of Alicia because they assume that, well, because I got married, I moved on from Alicia. I hate to
Not
disappoint
quite how that works.
I hate to disappoint you, but when you're grieving somebody, it's a lifetime process. Your person can grow around the grief, but the grief never goes away. And so what Monica has done is helped me in the grieving process, and to not be alone is wonderful. But there's still the joy that I have to talk about Alicia and the memories and the life that Alicia and I had together and the love that we had is a very beautiful thing. So when people come to me, I love that conversation. But there's been many conversations, some that I was involved in, where someone had the respect to actually call and have a conversation because they didn't understand how Alicia died. They didn't understand some of the past that Alicia had of what she was going through. Again, there's more stuff we'll talk about in the future podcasts as we go back in time and such, but to hear some of the things that have been said about me from people that I love, that I care about, which technically hurts more. If it was somebody I didn't care about, then I'll write them off. But there is a point of respect of, if you can't have a conversation with me about my past, my life, my dead wife, then you probably shouldn't have a conversation about me. And to hear things that have been said that are just mind blowing to me. And by the way, anybody, you're welcome. Comment on YouTube. If you know us, you're welcome to reach out. If you have questions or concerns or heard a rumor, if you want, I don't have any secrets. I just don't. And so if you want to talk, I'll talk one on one. No, I'm not going to air some people's dirty laundry just because they're not here. That's not appropriate. That wouldn't be honorable. But I don't have any fear of stuff that's out there. But with that comes this, when I hear somebody says something, right? And I find out, I fester on it. I want to deal with it. I want to make a phone call. I want to send a text message. And I have found that I have caused some significant damage by my reactive nature to what I hear, because I'm trying to, and I'll use I'm trying to protect my wife's honor, or I'm trying to protect my own honor, my own pride. I got to be very, very careful that in my process that I'm not jumping to. So the Bible says, seest thou a man that is hasty in his words, there's more hope of a fool than of him. I have several stories where there's more hope of a fool than of me, because of how hastily I jumped to the situation. And so we're talking today about really this conversation of what to do with what you hear when people are saying things, when people are doing. By the way, if people are gossiping about other people, then you need to deal with that as well. But when people are saying things, how do you handle that? What do you do with that? And I want to use Philippians 4:8. If you
Yeah,
read that.
Philippians 4:8 says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good rapport, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on those things. And I think when people say things and you constantly mull that over in your mind, especially if it's something negative, or I have enough negative in my mind, I don't need to mull over what someone else says. But the Bible's pretty clear about that we need to think about things that are true and honest and pure. And if you're constantly thinking about the negative, that there's just like a rut that your mind just constantly just rotates that.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you dwell on. So if you're allowed, and it's not just some self-help positive, mindset verse. It's a great verse in general, but it's really a great verse if you use this as the filter. The concept is, it's not what lands in your ears that matters nearly as much as what sits in your heart. And so sometimes we'll hear some things, especially because if it's someone that you trusted, or that you trust, or someone that you respect, or someone that you really you thought had your back, kind of a deal, and then you're finding out that these things were said, or they've said things to you that are not they're based on a perspective and opinion. I think I talked about this before when Alicia first passed away, because we'd been a little bit in a shell for a bit. There was an opening of like, hey, this is the world that we're living in. I was very, very vulnerable, in the sense that I allowed a lot of people into our lives, and I allowed too many, and it became this kind of um, this lot of inputs of people giving their opinion and their perspective. And if that's the life you're choosing to live, you're going to be very, very confused, because what do you go by? And you ultimately, as a spiritual leader for a family, depending on where you're at, you need to be able to make spiritual decisions on your own, irrelevant to all of the voices, but you need to run it through the good godly counsel in the Bible, right? And so taking what you're hearing and letting it sift through this filter and saying, okay, this is what was said. Is there truth to it? Now, I've had things that were said about me that were true. I got to deal with that, because what is true, I got to deal with. But I will say this, most of what is said with truth, there is perspective, opinions, and some stuff that's not necessarily based on truth. And so what do you do with that? And so Paul Chappell used to say this, you can take criticism like chewing gum, get the good stuff out, but don't swallow it. Like, spit out the rest. And so there is something where if someone's giving you feedback and opinion and perspective, maybe there's some truth and you can glean from that, but that doesn't mean you take everything at face value. Now, do you trust them, or do they have a godly perspective? Are they godly counsel? There's that, and then there's the whole rest of the world of every other opinion that's out there. Most of us make quick judgments on whatever we see going on with the life of somebody else. And yet, if you knew the truth, if you really knew what was really going on, there's a whole different perspective and a whole different reality, and you probably just need to sit down and shut up. So there is another aspect of this. One is be mindful what you're dwelling on, what you receive. I need to know, hey, what is it true? Is it good? Is it honest? Is it pure? Is it of good report? Because if it's not, then don't dwell on it. Process it right through you. In one ear, through the hollow head, out the other, right? Just, it needs to go through, because if you are processing as you're going through this and you start dwelling on something someone said that is not true, it's not based on truth, or it's a lie about you, what is the good that's going to come of that? Like, if you fester on something that's not true about you, what is your outcome?
A lot of negative.
A lot of negative.
I have the divorce aspect of this different than yours. I had after my divorce, I had some friends that I was hanging out with, and it was just like constant. They wanted to live in the past, like the past of like my marriage, my divorce, all of just the trauma that I had lived through. And it was just like every time we got together and we had dinner, it was like this. I felt like after we had dinner, I felt like I had left. I got in my car and like there's just dark clouds were just hanging over me. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
couldn't, like, I wanted to move past that. I wanted to move on with my life and have a happy life. And so I finally had to just say, I'm sorry, I can't hang out with you right now. I can't, because it was just constant negativeness.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a healthy part of, and obviously we've already had the boundaries conversation. So there's a protect your heart. Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it is the issues of life. And so what you dwell on, what you consume, becomes who you are. And so if you're not careful, proximity matters, in the sense that, like,
Yes.
you become the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so if you're spending time with people that are not allowing you to move on, and I'm not saying there's some conversations that are healthy and some past stuff you probably have to deal with, but you got to live there. Jesus lets us walk in his mercies every single day. That includes today, and that includes yesterday, that includes tomorrow. So his mercies are new every morning. Walk in them, right? And so the core idea of this is that using this verse as a mental filter, not necessarily just the positive mantra of, I'm going to think on these things. No, take the things you're thinking on, that you're dwelling on, that are in your heart and mind. And by the way, some of this is very, very heavy. If you're going through a fire right now and you're dealing with, friendships, especially if in a divorce, because in a divorce, unfortunately, and this is really how it is, in a divorce, if you know someone that's going through a divorce, you really have to choose a side. You don't get to
Right.
be the mediator. You don't get to be the friends of both. You can try as much as you want to. I have found it's very difficult to do, even in a coaching scenario, because people want to give their perspective and what their truth is. And it's not their truth versus somebody else's truth. The truth is the truth. The rest is perspectives and opinions on their perception of what the truth is, or the reality of what is, right? And so as you're doing this, you need to understand friendships are going to separate in a divorce situation. Some people that were best friends with you are now going to be best friends with your ex. People that were your absolute closest, that person would never leave you. Like, they were going to be your friend. Now that they are best friends with your ex, and you are now on the opposite side, not because you're a bad person, but because that's how it works. And so with that comes the hurt of, so and so said this, and then and then there's rumors that spread, and even if you have a amicable relationship where there's an agreement for the split or whatever, hurtful things happen. Because in most divorces, it's not, okay, we're going to get a divorce and we're happy about it. It's, I want a divorce and she's not. Like, that concept of separation where one person is leaving because they want to and the other person is stuck with carrying the baggage of not wanting that. All that to say, and by the way, there's so much more we can get into that, which we're not, but understanding that that creates a natural chasm for separation and hurt, where now there's opinions and perspectives and rumors, and now we don't know what's true and what's not true, and people tend to spread what they want to be true, but they tend to spread what their perspective holds, and that gets to be very, very painful. So using this verse as a filter and then using it with the concept of, just because something is said about me, it's hurtful, it's maybe it's true or it's not true or whatever it is. It's not even to my face. I think the hardest part of dealing with some of this is not that something was said. It's that something was said and it wasn't said to me. That gets one thing if you're man enough to call if you have issue with me and to confront me with what you believe is true, we can have that conversation. But if you're not willing to have that conversation with me, but you're willing to have it with other people that I either know or don't know, I have zero respect for you. And so the point is, with that, you hear this, now what am I going to do with that? Don't react. If you think about why people say what they say, specifically to you or about you, a lot of times it's because they want a reaction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that will nothing would make the devil happier than to watch discord be spread among the brethren,
Right.
because God hates that. So how do we handle that? The difference is reaction versus response. Reaction is, I'm going to get my dander up, throw my quills out. I'm going to be like a skunk and make a stink. I don't know. That's just going to be miserable for everybody. Versus responding, there's a couple responses. One is run it through the filter of this verse and run it through the Holy Spirit. Dr. Jim Rushing, when I was in college, he was my teacher before he passed away. He taught the last semester before he passed away. So the fall semester he was there, he would say this. So if you know him, Dr. Jim Rushing had a tremendous sense of humor. He's an evangelist, very godly man, elderly gentleman. And so he was talking to us young evangelists at the time. And he said this, he's like, when I would really lose my temper, he's like, I had a temper. And he said, he would always turn beet red. He said, I would get so angry at some pastors, and somebody would say something and be slanderous and not true. He's like, and then he's like, I'd be convicted by the Holy Spirit that I didn't know if it was true or not, right? And so what he said is, I'd give it 3 days. He's I get really, really angry, I give it 3 days. One to God the Father, one to God the Son, and one to God the Holy Spirit. He says, after 3 days, if I was still angry, if I was still upset, he said, then I felt like I could go deal with it and go head on. But he's like, 98% of the time, he says, even if it were true that someone had slandered or said something wrong or done, he says, even if it were true, God had calmed my heart and given me the place of surrender so that I could respond respectfully and truthfully and honestly and in a pure way, right? So I could respond the right way versus going at it with a phone call or a temper. And they didn't text message because he's older, but the concept was just that process of waiting. So sometimes your response is silence. I don't like silence as a response. Obviously, you hear me talk most of this podcast, but silence is a response. Silence isn't always a reaction, because to be honest, when people cause damage and are not willing to have the conversation, they actually just, I mean, really, they're immature Christians. They're gossiping. That's not exactly a wholesome thing for anyone to do. But what happens is eventually the silence gets loud. And so when you don't react, it's water off a duck's back. Is it true? Is it pure? By the way, you can still protect your honor, and if there be any honor, great. But the Bible says only by pride cometh contention. I don't have my Bible; it's on the shelf over there. But in that verse, I think it's 26:10, but it's Proverbs in Proverbs. By that verse, I have a little line that says this. The Bible says only by pride cometh contention, right? So in my Bible, I've written down, so if there's a problem, it's probably me, because contention only comes when there's pride. So before I go cause more contention, where is my pride? Because most of the time I'm reacting because my pride has been hurt. And my pride belongs at the foot of the cross where I surrender it. Doesn't mean I leave it there, but that's where it belongs. Thoughts?
I think sleeping on things is good. Sometimes if you sleep on something, your feelings can change or cool down or however you want to say it.
Yeah, because some things they're really big to me. I flip the timer over. Some things are really big in the moment because the pain, maybe the memory of what it brings, maybe the absolute shock of what you're dealing with. I think one of the worst counsels for marriage that I ever got was don't go to bed. Don't go to bed with unresolved issues. I don't believe you should go to bed angry. Like, I don't think that's healthy. But I do believe that there are times, and this is something I've learned, I don't know, in the last since March 15th,
Yeah, since we've
2020,
been married.
24. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This is something because, again, different relationships, but just the ability to live and let go. And it's okay to let things process, especially when
I'm a processor.
she's an internal processor. We all process. We're all
You
processors.
out loud.
I just process things immediately and out loud, right in front of me, until I come to a conclusion. And so when there's contention or there's odds or there's a disagreement or misunderstanding, I want to deal with it right away. Well, it caused myself a lot of anxiety when we first got married. Caused her a lot of anxiety too, because I want to process it immediately, because that's how Alicia and I did it. We process things pretty in front of us, right? But she's an internal processor. And so I've had to surrender my right to deal with it now, because, man,
Well,
if
it
I just,
didn't get you very far.
it didn't, man, I just got me
It
lost in
just
the
kind of made
woods.
things a lot worse.
Yeah. And
Especially
so,
if you haven't processed.
now it's a
what's going on.
lot better, but just that ability in a relationship to say, okay, this is, I need to surrender this. It's not worth it. And so when you're looking at this, hey, don't internalize what isn't true. So as you're dealing with this, couple thoughts, don't internalize what isn't true. Not everything said to you needs to be carried in you. Not everything that's said to you needs to be carried in you. Not everything that's said about you needs to be carried in you either. In fact, I'd probably do a lot better off without knowing some of the things that have been said about me, or been said about Alicia, or been said about both of us, because it didn't change anything. Now, because it was said to me, because I found out about it, man, I carried that for a while. I've got some bitterness I've had to resurrender multiple times because of people that I tremendously love saying things that weren't true, or were partially true with a twist, or were just their perspective. And so as we're looking at this, if it doesn't true, it shouldn't get any room in my mind. But the problem is that's way easier said than done. So filter through what isn't true. Take the stuff that is, hey, take the feedback that you need and spit out the rest. And then just take the concept of, you don't know, while people don't know where you're at, you also don't know where they are. People that are going through stuff, people that are hurting, oftentimes don't mind their mouth, and they say things, and they're processing it out loud, and they're vocalizing things. They're growing through it too. Give them some grace, but give them some space, and give yourself some boundaries, because just because they are going to do their thing doesn't mean you need to be involved in it. You don't need to be in a conversation about you. And then choose not to retaliate. It's so natural for us to just, I want to go for the jugular. I am good with my words. I promise, in a battle of words, I will win. Wits, not so much. Words, absolutely. I can loquaciously demote you to nothing in my mind with my words. That is not a spiritual gift. And so be mindful that the word is, the Bible says, not rendering evil for evil, but or railing for railing, but counterwise blessing. The concept is, when someone reviles you and whatever, the Bible makes it clear to bless them and to pray for them that curse you and despitefully use you, right? So there is a command to not do what they did to you. And so our privilege is that God has given us the test of, hey, you're taking a beating right now and it hurts. Words hurt. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will crush you. And you have to be able to process that in a very healthy and biblical way to say, okay, God, first of all, He knows what it's like to have individuals say things that are untrue about Him. Literally, as He goes to the cross, He literally goes to the cross, and people are lying about Him and slandering Him and calling Him all sorts of things. And He says nothing except for acknowledging who He was, which is that He was the Son of God. We need to acknowledge who He is in us, and to acknowledge that we are His, and that we belong to the Son of God. So,
And what He says about you. There's a song that talks about that, and I cannot remember.
I saw you looking up a song over there. I was
trying to find it. I can see the girl who sings it in my face, in my mind, and I just cannot think of. But it talks about who who
Yeah.
you are in Christ and who
Hmm.
Jesus says you are. And you think on those things.
Yeah. Because the devil comes out to lie, steal, and destroy. And so the lies that are out there are designed to destroy you. But to be honest, sometimes the lies that are said about you won't destroy you, but your reaction and your immaturity in response to them will. I watch this all the time on Facebook with individuals who are going through relationship issues. And they start posting on Facebook, and everybody in their world knows exactly what they're referring to. And like it or lump it, that's how it's perceived. So if you can't post something on Facebook that is kind, true, good, all that stuff, then don't post it at all. Be very, very careful, because your words, your actions, and how you respond, they reflect on Jesus, or they don't reflect on Jesus because they're not reflective of who he is. They're reflective of who you are. And what they're really exposing is what you're made of. When you're going through it, what gets revealed is what you're made of. Make sure you're somebody worth revealing, reflective of who he is. And then lastly, here's a concept here: anchor your identity in God, not in opinions. This is very difficult for me because I am a affirmation guy. I want the affirmation of everybody. And, I'm a recovering people pleaser, minus the recovering. So to be very aware that people's opinions oftentimes have molded me, but they've not molded me in the image of Christ. Not because people's opinions don't matter, but because God has already said who I am. And if I walk in his way, and if I walk in the way that I should, that is my identity. And again, a lot easier said than done. So as you're going through it, understand this: people are going to say things. Okay. Who do you say that he is by your response to those things? Because if you're going to respond immaturely, you miss out on the blessing of what God has commanded us to do. Hey, don't retaliate. Pray for them. So here's the challenge. If someone has hurt you by their words, or said things that are not true, right, just, pure, holy, all that stuff, I challenge you, I dare you to start praying for them. Not, you know, not the song.
Not help something fall on their
Yeah,
head.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. For the brakes go out, going down the hill. I'm not saying that kind of prayer. I'm saying, hey, legit pray for them in a way where God would bless them and that God would make himself real in their life. And by the way, a lot of times you'll be praying for people that are unsaved, but to be honest, the most hurtful things that have ever been said about me are by people that have claimed to be born again believers who walk with God. And it is your opportunity to really step out and say, no, I'm gonna be the person who responds like Jesus would.
I found the song.
Yeah, I know you're gonna say it. What is it?
Do you know what it is?
I can't think of it
Okay,
either.
it's called You Say by
Yes,
Lauren.
Daigle. Yeah, Lauren Daigle. So a great song.
Very good song.
It's about believing what Jesus says about you in spite of the noise of what you say about you and what the devil says about you and everybody else says about you. And by the way, on the flip side of our words, which is probably our next podcast, probably should be, is there's some people out there that are saying some encouraging things and they're praying for you and they're supporting you, because your tongue is powerful. So mind your mouth, because you can destroy someone, but also you can lift someone up in prayer. You can encourage them. You can reinforce who God is in their life. And so just take your time to, as you're dealing with this, you've been hurt bad enough to know what it feels like. Don't do that in return, and be mindful that you can be opposite of that in situations that you may not understand. Always be the voice of encouragement. Always be the son of consolation. Being an encouragement is one of the most fun things that we can do as Christians, because so few people do it. You will stand out immediately. And by the way, some of you have the opportunity, even with your family, or maybe your pastor, maybe your children. Man, just give a word of encouragement and watch the lights turn on if you encourage someone who's really going through it, even those bad boys. There's different people in your life right now that could use a word of encouragement in a world where there's so little of it. I dare you, challenge you, whatever it takes. If you need a dare, I'll dare you, but I'll challenge you right now. Think of a couple people in your life that you need to reach out to be an encouragement. Today, I received several text messages about some stuff that's going on at church. They were just words of encouragement from people, and I wasn't looking for it. I didn't need it, but I tell you,
Sure
it
made you
sure
feel
did
good.
feel good. Just it was like, oh, well, praise the Lord, it's great. So there's our opportunity, man. I appreciate you listening and tagging along with us. Obviously, we went just as much overtime as we normally do. I hope it made sense. We do look forward to our next couple of sessions. We have a couple. We're going to get to the Christmas card story. That's what we're going to call it, and that's like my favorite story. I actually told that to my fifth grade Awana boys last week. It was
Oh,
great. Yeah, I
really?
forgot to tell you that. So
Oh,
just
nice.
the Awana boys know ahead of you guys. So if you want to get the case, so you can
Inside
ask.
scoop.
Yeah, they have the inside scoop. So I don't think they appreciate it nearly as much as I did, but I love telling it. So, Monica, any last thoughts?
No.
No last thoughts. Well, I promise I have plenty
I
of
didn't know
thoughts.
you were gonna ask that this
I
time. I would
know.
have mentally prepared for that.
Yeah, I'll have to start prepping her for this. Thanks for hanging out. We appreciate you. Please, if you do this, please like and share the video, but also on YouTube. We'd love to hear where you're listening from. If you wouldn't mind just taking a moment to comment, we do appreciate those that have commented. And
Subscribe and hit the bell is what we've heard.
subscribe and hit the bell. And we appreciate you. Thanks so much. You guys have a great week.
Bye.